Hi, and welcome back to ConTinual's Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. So tonight we're going to be stacking up those to-be-read piles, and of course we're coming into the holiday season, so it's going to be time to be buying those for other people as well. So let's find out who is joining us tonight and what they're bringing. So Christie, you are up first.
Hi, my name is Christie Meierz, and I write politically driven space opera wrapped around a romance. I have a short story just released as a teaser for my upcoming novel. The short story is called Food Fight, and the upcoming novel is called Rembrandt Station. It is the second installment in my second science fiction series.
Jay?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Requard. I write epic fantasy and sword and sorcery. I'm also the host of Pondering the Orb on YouTube, which examines books, music, and more. And I'm here to promote my short story re-release, Death and Dust, Pale Sand Adventures, 2nd edition.
Fraser?
Hi, my name is Fraser Sherman. I write historical fantasy, mostly 20th century, but I have a self-published steampunk 1880s book coming out next week. And I just released a not self-published book on alien visitors to Earth in movies.
Tamsin?
Hi, I'm Tamsin Silver, and I write both urban fantasy and historical fantasy. My newest release is the third book in the first trilogy of the Untold Legends with Falstaff Books.
So let's find out a little bit more about the kinds of stories that we're going to be bringing. So Christie, why don't you tell us a little bit more kind of about what we're going to be getting both in the short story and in that upcoming novel?
In the short story takes place on a space station that orbits the world I mainly write about, which is called Tolar. It is a planet on the edge of Earth's empire, filled with genetically engineered humans who have become empaths. The space station is run by a human who is the main character of both the short story and the novel. And in the short story, he's dealing with aliens having a food fight in the station cafeteria, while at the same time, because this is my space opera, there's political shenanigans going on because Earth is sending ambassadors, and his boss, the ruler of Mondolar, is mysteriously unavailable.
Nothing like a good food fight to start the series.
The short story ends about an hour before the novel begins. In the novel, Bertie, the main character, goes down to the planet. Turns out, okay, I don't think I'm spoiling anything because it's in the blurb. He's in love with a man he can't, he thinks he doesn't have a chance with. And he finds out otherwise, and finds out the hard way that some Talari are actually poisonous. So he spends the rest of the novel trying to recover from that, trying to figure out what to do, trying to figure out if he wants to take the genetic modification that the Talari have to offer.
Something to be said for toxic relationships.
In the meanwhile, he has to deal with political shenanigans.
So Jay, how about you?
So my collection, Death and Dust, actually is 5 short stories, 2 that were previously published through the Big Bad Anthology series, and 3 that I released to my readers through my newsletter over the last few years. I recently was able to get my hands on Vellum and kind of remake the ebook into something I was kind of happy to re-release. And these 5 stories follow an undead bounty hunter and revenant named Conjure and his partner, a vampire named Emma, as they face off against necromancers, mad undead robber barons, and a few monstrosities that creep out of the desert where the setting takes place. I try to tell people it's a mix of dark fantasy and weird western, which of course features a lot of my sword and sorcery stylings.
Fraser?
My book, The Aliens Are Here, Extraterrestrial Visitors in American Cinema and Television, looks at various themes dealing with alien visitors, alien invaders, friendly aliens, alien superheroes, aliens in love, aliens and kids, and focuses on each chapter covers one or two movies relevant to the particular theme, discusses other ones in smaller detail, and tackles the various themes involved. Questionable Minds is my steampunk book. It's set in 1888. England has, for about 8 or 9 years, been dealing with the fact that psionic powers, they have figured out how to make them work. Society is trying to figure out how to deal with them and keep it from disturbing the status quo. Good luck with that. And in the course of the book, Jack the Ripper shows up and starts slicing up women who possess psychic power. Is he just a crazy, or does he have an end game? Spoiler, he has an end game.
I could have guessed that from the back blurb. Tamsin.
So the Murder of Cricket Kugler came out top of September, is the third book in the Untold Legends series, is the final chapter of the first trilogy. And this is going to continue what we've already seen in the first 2 books. The series takes place in 2 time periods. It's both in 1878 and 1949. It revolves around, of course, the Lincoln County War and Billy the Kid. And then it also deals with the unsolved murder of Cricket Kugler in 1949. Billy meets her in the beginning of book 2. It's not a big shock. It's in the title, folks. She's dead by the end of book 2. And by book 3, he feels like this could have been his fault. And he's headed back with his partner and a few more regulators to try and figure out what has happened to her. And it's just a really, I wrote it during the pandemic and I'm really proud of it. It ties off everything in a really epic cinematic adventure to end the series. But yeah, it's something that just follows Billy the Kid through. And in this one, if you are a history buff and you know anything about Billy the Kid, this book picks up 1 year from Tunstall's death with the parlay with Jesse Evans and Dolan. It's 1 year from when Tunstall was killed, and then it takes you all the way through when Garrett shoots and kills Billy in 1881. And then it also is in 1949.
So, Jay, let's dive a little bit deeper into the world of this collection of short stories. Okay. So, kind of let's set it up a little bit more. What's kind of the world we're going to fall into here?
So the story takes place in a common world space that I created when I got started writing, called Dovehane, which means dragon world in kind of the native tongue. Very, very original. But I kind of use this world to move about place to place, and the world that Conjure and Emma reside in is one that actually takes place over many centuries because they're undead and immortal. So I kind of play with time and changes in, fashion, technology, the way societies build out and develop, especially in tough terrain areas like deserts. There's one story that I have where Conjure and Emma actually go to a casino out in the desert, and I get to play a lot with kind of the dynamics of having that sort of setting and what challenges are faced out there. I think what people will see is kind of a pre-gunpowder society. They're right at the edge of moving away from kind of swords and knives and riding on horseback, and they're starting to get into cannons and muskets. So there's a lot of transition, but at the same time, they're surrounded by this terrible necromantic magic that takes place primarily to the north of them in these 10 sorcerer kingdoms that for the longest time have kind of plagued everything. And Conjure himself is actually the spawn of a witch and one of these necromancers who birthed him as a small mortal child, grew him to a man, slew him, and then raised him again as a revenant to serve as their bounty hunter, basically collecting souls for the necromancer. So this is a very dark story. It's anti-heroes and villains facing off against other anti-heroes and villains, the bad facing off against bigger bads. But it's also wrapped up kind of in a story around bad parents and kind of having to endure that. Kind of taking the trauma of the people who made us and moving away from that identity and trying to find something not only within ourselves, but maybe within each other, which plays a big part in Conjure and Emma's relationship as a revenant and a vampire, who, while they still kind of remember their human sides, they're also still dealing with the fact that they're overwhelming, naggingly evil. So I get to play with a lot of interesting dynamics in the story with that as well.
Fraser?
Okay. In Questionable Minds, the premise is that Edward Bulwer Lytton, who in our world wrote a novel about encountering a psychic race underground in America, actually met them for real and brought back enough of their technology to start Britain on the path of developing psychic powers. Then Helena Blavatsky, who was a founder of Theosophy in our world, also figured out how to make them work without using any sort of technology. England is still trying to deal with this, and what sort of powers are appropriate if you are a gentleman? What sort of powers are appropriate if you are one of the lower classes? And my protagonist, Sir Simon Taggart, is a baronet. His wife was murdered several years ago on the orders of Professor Moriarty. He does not know the name, only that it was the guy who runs the underworld. He's obsessed with getting revenge. He works with Scotland Yard's Mentalism Investigation Department, which deals with psychic crimes. He has the advantage. He has impenetrable mental shields. He cannot be controlled. He cannot be mind-read. A lot of people consider this a disadvantage because psychic powers are the next step in human evolution, and he has been cut off from them completely. But obviously, when you're working with the cops, it is an advantage. Now, Jack the Ripper has shown up. He is killing women. How is he? He is killing women, and why? What is his end game? What role does Moriarty play in what's going on? And so that is the setup. And it follows. It's violent and gory, but I think it's a pretty good book even so.
Do you want to touch on the new Aliens in Film book as well?
Yes. The focus of this, I have taken, like I said, it looks at themes and ideas and tropes that crop up again and again. For example, in The Thing from Another World, the 1951 version that was later surpassed by John Carpenter's The Thing, the scientist who wants to communicate with the alien monster makes perfectly reasonable points. It is a plant creature. It probably finds the idea of intelligent animal life as strange as we would find encountering intelligent cabbages. Maybe we can communicate it with it. Maybe we can make it see that that we are intelligent like it. But because this is an alien because this is an alien invasion movie, the creature is othered. Everything the scientist says that is perfectly reasonable is wrong. The only solution is kill the alien. On the other hand, in Day the Earth Stood Still, the scientists who want to communicate with Klaatu are the right ones. The military is trigger happy. The government wants to exploit him. The sensible thinkers are the ones you can trust. And this sort of thing varies depending on what kind of movie you're in, who you can listen to. And I look at that, at other themes, the linkage of alien superior intelligence with being emotionless, the othering of aliens in a way you could not do if it was a human foe. You can't simply refer to, well, you will get a lot of flack if you refer to them as maggots and creatures who have to be wiped out to the last soldier. Alien human love and the problems that result in alien human rom-coms and variations like that. So it was a lot of fun. And I think the outcome is very interesting.
So Tamsin, seeing as how this is closing out the trilogy, or at least the first trilogy, what is kind of the whole world that we're really going to be following through for the series?
As in when it continues, or the one we have right now?
Up to where we're at right now.
What you're stepping into is you're stepping into the real world as you know it and real history. So I spent 5 years doing research, working with historians on this, and spending a lot of time in Lincoln, spend enough time in New Mexico to love it and then move here. but what I've done is I've taken that and I've wrapped it in Irish folklore. So what you're going to do is you're going to step into the real world and to a magic system that not everybody knows about, that is hidden, which is like a lot of your fantasy and urban fantasy novels, where you have a creature who has escaped from the other world. She's a leader of the dark realm of the other world, and she has escaped because she was bored. And so she has come here to run amok, and she is doing just that. And the only way that Billy can really get his soul back is to send her back. And so in this, you learn about a little bit about that other world, not a lot, but you get to learn about the magic that's been created by the things that she has, I guess, built in this world. So she has created werewolves, she has created vampires, she has created all these other creatures, and then there's other fantastical creatures that already existed. And so it has to do with the fact that she's made them on this plane and what that means for the world in general. As the series does continue, so this series, as I mentioned, is in 2 time periods. The next trilogy will be the center section that you don't have yet. Thus, it will create an entire picture of everything in there from one time to the other. So you'll head to England in the late 1880s. You'll be in 85. You'll be in Texas, and then you'll head to Chicago. So you're going to get a little bit. You're going to get that section in between, and you're going to learn more about the other world. You're going to learn more about the other creatures that exist, the underground of them in England and Scotland, and you're going to learn more about that world. It's going to expand on it. But in the first series, you just get an introduction to some of the magic that exists, the things that Billy can do with that curse that he's been given, and how that then will play into the next series. When you learn, you'll get to really see his growth more. In this first series, you see the beginning of his power, and then you get to see as he finally comes to an understanding and acceptance of who he is and what he can offer. And then the other series will be, you'll get to really see that growth as he moves through it. And you get to follow 3 big serial killers in the process. So it'll be a lot of fun.
So Christie, tell us a little bit more about this world you've created, the system you've created, space station, really kind of fill us in more about so we know the world we're falling into.
Okay, well, there's 2 parts to this. There is the dystopic Earth Empire, which contacted Tolar back at the beginning of my novels. And then you have the Tolari, who are actually descended from a group of essentially children who were stolen from Earth 6,000 years ago and genetically modified to be able to live on this planet. This planet is rich in arsenic. And the Tolari had to be genetically modified to shed it so that they could exist there without difficulty. This is why when humans have relationships with Tolari, it can get interesting. But the political landscape that I paint has Earth Central Command finding out that the Tolari have a genetic modification which actually regenerates. It doesn't just turn you into somebody who can exist on their planet. It actually regenerates you to young adulthood, and then you start aging again. Tolar has it, Earth wants it. That's where the political shenanigans go on.
Sounds like a fun read. So let's dive a little bit deeper into who we're going to be hanging out with. Because again, at the end of the day, every story is really about the characters we meet and who we get to go on adventure with. So Fraser, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who we're going to be riding along with in the late 1800s?
My central character, Sir Simon Taggart, is a baronet, which is not really a high-rank title in the aristocracy, but he comes from a very old family, and his father and grandfather and Simon himself married rich, so he has pots of money, and that gives him a great deal of clout. the second, other than the villain, the second most interesting character, I think, is Henry Jekyll, who has, since he escaped the clutches of that blackmailer, Edward Hyde, devoted himself to good works and living a moral life. But, and I don't think this is spoiler because everyone's going to expect it, Edward Hyde turns up again. And if anything, he comes off, given that he is an absolutely evil person, not that Henry Jekyll does not have evil, because that's where Hyde comes from, he comes off as very much the cynical anti-hero because he's being played off against people who are much worse than him. And so he gets to be snarky and cynical and only occasionally does something really nasty. Other supporting characters, there's Simon's mistress, Janet, who is a telekinetic thief and also works and reformed now and works as his daughter's governess. Miss Grey, who is Scotland Yard's expert on psychic abilities, what people think of them, who has what powers, that is her specialty. And there are multiple Sherlock, not Sherlock Holmes himself, but multiple Sherlockian characters lurking in the background, Colonel Moran, Jonathan Clay, and others. And I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, so that was a lot of fun. Those are the key players in the cast.
So Tamsin, who are we saddling up and riding with this time?
Well, you're still with Billy the Kid. He is in 1949. He is a federal agent working for MI5. And he is known as William Kidwell. Garrett gave him that name because he thought it'd be funny. But he is right. You'll be riding with Richard Brewer again. But you're also going to get a few more. You're going to get a few more historical characters in there. You're going to get to. You're also going to get to meet Tom Folliard. So he was also one of the regulars back during the Lincoln County War and very good friends with Billy the Kid. He will actually show up in this book. You'll get him. You also will learn, if you've read the first two, you've met Kit. Kit is not everything she seems. And so my fiery redhead is going to surprise everybody with some wonderful extra power to help with the fight. And you're also going to actually get to meet, you're actually going to get to meet a new character, two of them that I loved tremendously. There's Kennedy, and she's the first vampire of this continent. And you'll get to meet her. She's fabulous. And she shows up partway through. And she's my only vampire. I did that intentionally because I have a lot of other vampire books, so I didn't bring one in until this book. But you're also going to meet Dr. Ryan. Dr. Ryan is, you don't learn really much about what his powers are in this book. You do know from when they meet him that there is history there. And so you will then get his full story. I have started writing a standalone novel that explains his background. And he is from the other world. And he is royalty from the other world. And he carries a very special sword. And so he is, so you'll get to meet him. You'll get a little bit taste of that. And then eventually he will also be in the next series as well. So he is definitely a planted character, intentional, and he's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of trouble moving forward.
Christie, tell us a little bit more about our troubled pair.
Well, the main character in both the short story and one of the main characters in the novel that's coming out is Bertie. He is actually, his full name is Lord Albert St. John Rembrandt Esquire. He is an attorney, he is a financier, and he is an economist. And he is the reason why Tolar Trade Station is there. He lined up the investors, he grew the building fund, he got the connections, he got it built. And because he did that, Earth decided it wanted him dead. So he can't really leave Tulare space. He's desperately in love with one of the Tulare that he's met. but he thinks he doesn't have a chance. And he's been kicked out of his family. Oh, and by the way, this is 500 years in the future, which, given the current climate in the world today, I'm not sure is quite far enough. He ends up down on the planet. He ends up getting poisoned. His paramour is a provincial ruler on the planet, is a Talari, who has his own issues, but mostly he's too young to rule the planet, not the planet, the province. Sorry. Losing my train of thought here. He has a council of advisors, which tends to be more interfering than advisory. And he's dealing with them while Bertie is sick, and they're trying to work out how they're going to be together. And then there's a crisis on the station, and Bertie has to go back before he's well enough, really, to deal with the political shenanigans. He's very capable, but he's very unsure of himself. He's one of my favorite characters.
Jay? So you want to tell us a little bit more about this crowd of questionable people that we're going to be hanging out with in your crowd?
Well, I mean, the original premise behind these stories was we were supposed to write villains who were the primary protagonists of their narrative, and that expanded into 5 stories. Conjure comes from a place where he was basically made to serve a function. He's basically made to kill people, take their souls, and give that power to first his mother, who he then murders, and then later on his father, who disappears when he was a child. So he's siphoning power to this necromancer he's never seen before. On the other side, you have his partner, Emma, who was, before she became a vampire, a miner's daughter who was basically sold off to a robber baron to pay off the miner's debts. So these two come together in a very wounded relationship. And a lot of what is explored is whether or not you could actually get past the trauma to a better place. Especially if you come from I think when we look at villains and narrative, especially in today's world, we try to do this kind of 2 sides of the villain, where one side they're definitely evil, but on the other side they're redemptive. I wanted to do away with that completely. They're fully evil. But in facing off against worse necromancers, mad shamans, undead robber barons who, the miners sold Emma to, they started asking these questions of how bad are we really compared to the world that we find ourselves in? And then, of course, it results in a climactic battle between Conjure and Emma versus his father, of course, the all-powerful necromancer.
So I'm going to ask one of my favorite questions, all mostly for Jay's benefit. But one of the best parts about being a writer, one of the best parts about storytelling, one of the best parts of being able to go through this is you always get to dive into rabbit holes and research, and you get to discover things, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about the process, whether it's about the work, something. But in anything I've ever written, you always learn something in the process. So Tamsin, in this one, what was the thing that surprised you, or what'd you learn? What was the most fun thing? What was the one thing that popped out that you just really went and said,
Cricket Kugler. Cricket was her nickname. Her first name was Ovida. Her death is the reason why New Mexico stayed the beautiful land that it is. It's because of her that Las Vegas, Nevada is Las Vegas, Nevada, and that the entire Sin City culture is not all of New Mexico. The mafia the whole reason everything happened. So there was a lot. The Chicago mob had really moved in. They had started building casinos in Santa Fe. They also wanted to do them in Las Cruces. They really loved the lawlessness of the area, the open desert, for many reasons. And they were really, Bugsy was saying, let's be in Nevada. And they were like, no, we want to be here in New Mexico. And when everyone stayed so tight-lipped about who killed her, it's kind of like Capone, they couldn't get him on stuff, but they got him on tax evasion. So what happened here is because they couldn't get her killer, they went after all the illegal gambling. And they found out how the dirty sheriffs were involved. They went to federal prison. And in the end, what happened was that the mob said, you're right. We're out. We're not going to be here. We're going to go to Nevada. And so if it hadn't been for her death, New Mexico would be a completely different experience, and Las Vegas would not probably be there. And everybody would come to New Mexico to spend their money, and we would lose all the beauty of this state to that. So her death saved New Mexico. And I thought that was something that was just amazing for this poor 18-year-old girl who lost her life and it was never solved. And so it was an honor to get to write her and give her words again. And it was really great to be able to show that in my story, that her death was not in vain, that it saved an entire state.
Christie, how about you? What's the thing that you learned or surprised you as you were working on this one?
So I was working on this one. I was researching a number of things, but the thing that really caught my attention, and it was one of those situations where you do like all of this research and then maybe 1% of it gets into your book. And it was Islamic Persian culture, because one of my secondary characters is from a culture I've invented that is largely Islamic and Persian. It was a lot of fun looking up the sorts of food that she would have cooked up to serve to her guests. It was fun finding out how she would react, what sorts of things she would say when faced with a tragic situation. And I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun.
So what was the one big thing you discovered in that process? What's the recipe that needs to be in the book?
Lamb meatballs.
Yeah.
Good to know there's still mutton in space.
Well, Bertie, who is the station master up there, doesn't want to know how she got lamb.
Jay, how about you? What's the thing that you learned working on this one?
So I have to separate it into the two different editions. With the second edition, putting the ebook back together and re-releasing it in a new package, thanks to the Vellum software that's now available for a lot of self-published authors. I think I was able to gain a lot more confidence in my presentation in terms of the ebooks I'm able to put out, and it's helping me start building towards actually building print editions on my own. So there was a lot of confidence building in the process of putting together the second edition. When it came to the actual writing of the stories, there's so much bitterness and hurt and darkness and violence and bloodshed and murder and abuse and power that the thing that I discovered about Conjure and Emma wasn't, them getting into fights with necromancers or them dealing with the trauma of their parents. It was them finding tenderness with each other in these small little moments. And I think that these were the first stories that really helped me as an author develop the sense and maybe the ability to write tenderness, because, as authors, we never really know if we master a skill at being able to transmit something as human as that, or other things, hatred, courage, love, stuff like that. But I think that these stories were able to help me really hone my ability to find those tender moments, even between two dastardly evil characters who would murder you on sight, but between each other there's this connection, and there's this solace, and there's this sense of being able to move on in not just as individuals, but in a partnership. And if I learned or took anything away from Death and Dust, The Pale Sand Adventures, it was being able to write that.
Fraser?
I think something I noticed when I was working on the movies for the Aliens Are Here, it's The Thing from Another World, Predator, Independence Day, and how they deal with their masculinity. In The Thing, and this is the kind of pattern you're starting to notice if you watch enough movies. In The Thing from Another World, it's a Howard Hawks movie. His guys are tough. All Hawks men are tough. And it's taken very much for granted. They don't have anything to prove. They know they're tough. The female lead, she's, given the circumstances, pretty calm and confident. She's tough too. Fast forward to Predator in the 1980s. Those guys are tough, but it's much more self-conscious about showing it. You have a big arm wrestling match where Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger show off how big their muscles are. Jesse Ventura, as one of Schwarzenegger's crew, carries this insanely oversized gun into the jungle, which, as they admit on the commentary track, looks very cool, but hopelessly impractical. Then you get to Independence Day, where they really worry the men have to prove they are masculine. There is constant discussion, are they tough enough? Except for Will Smith, who obviously is. And by comparison, the women basically stand around and go, oh, you're so big and strong. And the change in the emphasis on how they deal with the men's ability to stand up and protect everyone it was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it sounds like we've got a lot of fun things to add to that to be read pile. So before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you and those new releases. So, Christie? Websites, social media, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, mostly. For social media, you can find my books on any of the usual suspects. Because I am self-published, my physical books are print on demand, so you would have to order one if you wanted one. But the ebooks are available anywhere that fine ebooks are sold. And a few of them, like Food Fight, is free, the short story that was just released, so go get it.
Jay?
Hi, everyone. Once again, I'm Jay Requard. I'm an author of epic fantasy and sword and sorcery. You can find me at jrequard.com or at jrequard on Twitter. Yes, Tamsin, I am this cheesy. Thank you for clapping. If you sign up for my newsletter through my website, you can actually get Death and Dust for free, but it is also 99 cents on Amazon. Thank you all for having me tonight.
Fraser?
I'm Fraser Sherman. You can find me online under my name at Facebook, on Twitter, at least at the moment, as Bogatir5, and at FraserSherman.com, which is my own website. You can find The Aliens Are Here at most major retailers or from the McFarland website. Questionable Minds is available in ebook from most retailers. I don't think it has cleared Amazon yet. You can find a listing of them all at Draft to Digital's Books to Read site. And the paperback should be live in the next couple of days on Amazon. It's also print on demand, but I'm going through them, so that's where you find it.
Tamsin?
You can find everything at tamsinsilver.com. I'm also on Facebook as Tamsin Silver. You can also follow the book series. If you are on Facebook, you can look up The Curse of Billy the Kid, or it's also under Billy the Kid Rides Again, as far as the actual address. Other than that, you can get my books online as well, anywhere those are sold. If you happen to magically live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you can actually buy my books at Barnes & Noble on the west side. Let's specify.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, Speculative Fiction Academy, and of course, your ConTinual. And we will see all of you guys soon with more stuff to add to that to be read.
Wait.
Oh no.
Tamsin didn't use it. So I will.
Didn't. Go
Fuck.
for it.
That's it. Fuck. Thank you, everyone. Follow me on YouTube at Pondering the Orb.
I can add one more thing.
Sure.
You
Please.
can find me at ChristieMeierz.com, which I completely forgot about because I went first.
I would like to add, I have a short story coming out at Meta Stella, META Stella tomorrow. It's called The Savage Year.
Congratulations.
Nice.
All right, Tamsin, what have you got to add?
Fuck yeah.
And that's
how
where
you
we're
end
going
the
to end it this evening. Everybody have a good one.
Yours too. Good night.